know what you're about to say. Ooh, where are the book reviews? Where are the book reviews? Alright, listen, there's only so many Colleen Hoover books, okay? I'm gonna run out of content very quickly. I've been mega busy, and the main reason I've been so busy is because I've been at the Sydney Film Festival. Let's go! So the Sydney Film Festival just finished as of when I'm recording. It finished yesterday with its closing ceremony. It's where they premiere a bunch of Aussie movies, a lot of Australian movies for that year come out of the Sydney Film Fest, and it's also where they premiere a bunch of foreign movies, and they have their Australian premiere at the Film Fest. And it all takes place, or for the most part takes place, in the State Theatre, which is this very nice building where you're meant to be watching operas and shit, not fucking a Wes Anderson movie. And in that, when you're watching a film, only about 30% of the seats can see the screen properly, and if you're not in a row that is like at an angle, then you can't fucking see the screen because some fat, tall fuck would sit in front of you and then you can't see past their head because it's not slanted, the seat's unslanted. But we're not gonna talk about that right now. Everybody's coughing, there's a million old men around you. It's epic. It is epic. There's some old person who's probably gonna be sitting next to you and you're watching like a 3-hour French movie and they're just like trying to unwrap a fucking like candy wrapper for the entire 3 hours, like, oh, I can't get it open. That's the demographic. There have been bangers pretty much every year that I've watched this festival. Last year we had, what did we have? The Quiet Girl, we had Fire of Love. The year before that we had Titan. They premiered Dune there, that was fucking sick. Yeah, the film fest is really good and they get a lot of really good stuff. And it allows me to see a lot of the movies that aren't going to come out in Australia for another 9 months or so because for whatever reason, country to country distribution of Oscar movies is fucked. So I saw 11 movies total, or 11 and a half because I saw a short movie, and I'm just going to talk about them order to order and then I'm going to rank them at the end, and let's just fucking do it. The first movie I saw was called Scrapper by Charlotte Regan. This is a movie that's going for a neo-realist style in the vein of like a Mike Leigh or an Andrea Arnold or something like that, but it's trying to do that in a happy way, so all the characters are very happy and always giggling, and the main dynamic is more sweet. And the director said that she was interested in showing the moments of happiness that you usually get like a minute of in something like Secrets and Lies or something like that. This movie is very slight. It's pretty formulaic, to the point where I would just prefer to watch something like The Florida Project or Fish Tank, just because those are shot through with darkness more, and I kind of like that more. Whereas this was very slight and sentimental and kind of treacly and sweet. The movie is about a young girl whose mother dies and then her weird dad comes back to live with them, and her dad's basically like a man-child. Harris Dickinson was genuinely fantastic in here as the man-child dad. He totally distinguished himself from his Beach Rats performance, which is also a really good movie. There's a moment in here where the kids steal his phone to see what he was doing in the time that he's been away, and he comes in, and he's like genuinely scary. He's like, give me my fucking phone back! And he's like very intimidating, and the camera has like a low angle shot from the kid's perspective, and that's really good. There's a lot of shots like that are really good. But he's intimidating, but then in another scene he's kind of like pathetic, and then in another scene he's like pretty, like, he's very emotionally effective. He does a lot with the performance. There's a lot that he fits in. And he's very good in it. He's the best part. The main girl was pretty good for a kid, but there were a lot of moments where she was meant to cry and the camera would cut away and then cut back and she would be crying, and it was clear that they just put eye drops in, and that I didn't like that very much. And the main girl also has this friend who's this mumbly fuck, and I couldn't understand a damn word he was saying, and he was really annoying, and he was also like just bad at acting. I connected to the style of the movie kind of intermittently. There's a couple of stylistic things that I love. There's this mega structure that she's building in her room, which isn't actually like that, but she's building a structure out of bicycle parts. That was really cool. I liked all of that stuff. I liked there's moments where they would have like an old filmy aspect ratio shot of other people talking about the main character, and I loved that. That was a fun stylistic choice. But the editing was really annoying to me. Sometimes the movie would cut from something quiet, a moment of contemplation, straight into something really loud, and there was no reason to edit something like that. It was just to fucking jolt you awake, and I did not like that. And I don't like when movies do that in general. There were also spin-around shots where a character would be talking about something weird, and then it would show that weird thing in reality in like a sort of fantasy moment, and it was literally like The Kissing Booth. It was reminding me of shots in The Kissing Booth, and I went, oh, maybe if you don't include those, so I'm not thinking about Joey King, how about that? I also found the sound really bad in the State Theatre while I was watching this, and again, these mumbly British fuckers weren't helping, so that was annoying, where I could not understand a damn thing anyone was saying, but it was still pretty good. Big ol' 6 from me, I was okay with it. The next movie I saw was fucking Asteroid City, the new movie by Wes Anderson, and oh my god, dude. This is easily the worst movie I've ever seen at the Sydney Film Festival, at like any time I've been. It was genuinely, truly awful. Like, one of the worst experiences I've ever had in a cinema. I nearly got up to leave 2 or 3 times. I was on a date, the date went well, but the movie was ass, and I was like, trying to convince my date to leave. I was like, can we just fucking go? And there were these two monstrously large men on either side of us, and we couldn't get out of the row, so I had to sit there and watch Wes Anderson talk down to me and patronize me for 2 hours. I couldn't fucking stand it. I hate Wes Anderson fans, all of you, no exception. You guys will excuse anything because of style. Everything is okay, even if it's dog shit because it's his style. You'd be like, you don't understand, actually. It was actually very intentional when you push your fucking horn-rimmed glasses up your nose and you take a sip of fucking orange juice. I've seen a lot of the reviewers who I don't respect, even before I saw these reviews, saying this movie is more profound and deep than we're used to from him, actually. It's actually very deep. And I think Mr. Anderson must have sucked them. No wonder Wes made a movie this boring and this so, like, up its own ass. It's because nobody will sit him down and go, Wes, this framing device is actually really pointless. Do you want to remove that? And he'll be like, no, and he'll go back to smoking a very immaculately rolled cigarette. Fuck him, bro. When Michael Bay makes a movie that has like a Premiere Pro filter over it and the camera's fucking shaking like a toddler holding a toy truck, nobody's going, that's Michael Bay's style, you just don't get it. Oh, you're just not smart enough for it, actually. You're not emotional enough, you're not an emotive enough movie watcher to understand it. If you have bad characters, then style doesn't excuse that. If your plot is a shambling, boring mess, then style doesn't excuse it. If every attempt at being profound in the dialogue sounds like a Reddit thread, then it doesn't excuse it. Ah, yes, at these particular points my movie is meant to be dog shit you just don't understand, you silly little film watcher, you. I don't know what part of Wes Anderson's style you guys like anyway. What is it? I mean, like, the production design is lovely, of course. French Dispatch is better for that. And the costumes are pretty good too. Is that it? Is that all you guys like because it has a look? All you guys know the name of one director, and he has a really noticeable style, and you're like, I'm actually a film head because I like Wes Anderson, and you roll up your little weed and you take a smoke and you're like, and you go, ooh, it's chilly. You're just hippies, you're all just hippies, like, shut up. So Wes Anderson tries to focus on being profound in certain specific moments, but his characters suck at this point in his career, and this movie is way too long, and the profundity is coming through a ridiculous framing device, and that's what he does. Okay, genuinely, I think this is what he does. I think he spams framing devices in his movies so that the audience stops being able to understand it on a first watch and they call him genius by default. I guarantee when I rewatch this, it will not be as complicated as how I felt the first time I watched it. The same with the French Dispatch. French Dispatch, I think it's like the second narrative in that movie was like ridiculously complicated and I couldn't follow it. And I know people who saw that and they went, that was a genius interlaced narrative. But I think he just spams it so you can't understand it. That's what I genuinely think that. Every actor in this is doing a role I've seen them do 1,000 times, and Wes's directing is really fucking robotic at this point. When the characters were deadpan in something like The Grand Budapest, it wasn't robotic. In this movie, it's like he didn't direct it. He was like, can you actually just say that line with less emotion, please? Thank you, yes. No, you see, it's my style. That's why I don't want you to have a character. Yes, thank you. I actually don't want characters in my movies. I just want this to be an art piece for annoying fucking 14-year-old bisexuals to watch. Can you make sure to not have any good acting in this, please? There's a moment where all the characters are yelling, "You can't wake up if you don't fall asleep," and I started scream laughing in the theater. My date was laughing as well, but I was like genuinely like nearly in hysterics because it was like how I would write something at 13. It was like, I'd be like, this is such a profound end to my story. As like a 13-year-old, and like all these characters just stand in a row and chant it, and I'm like, shut the fuck. Like, genuinely, I don't think I've ever seen a worse screenplay than this in my life. I've never seen a worse screenplay. This might be one of the worst movies I've ever seen. But I mean, when it wasn't being unbelievably boring, there were at least some funny bad moments that I was liking. But I think overall, the thing that will annoy me the most about this movie is the dialogue, because I think even Wes Anderson fans will know that this movie is shit, but they just won't admit it. So that's gonna be annoying for me to have to deal with for the next 6 months or so. He's playing his movies so safe, he's hobbling around on the same fucking crutches, his framing device spamming, his overly eloquent dialogue where characters will say a really long word and the 14-year-olds will be like, oh, that's genius, I've never heard that word before, and I'll be like, well, that didn't really fit. The one thing in this movie I liked was the alien. I liked the alien bit, that made me laugh. This movie is like framed as a play, it's framed around a play. Didn't make any fucking sense. Why was it framed around a play? There's no reason for it to do that. He pretends to find this emotion in it because it's like, oh, I'm not even gonna bother trying to interpret it. No, he doesn't deserve that, fuck that. I was gonna say something about one of the characters, but then I remember that there aren't any characters. It's just an excuse for him to talk down to me. So no, I don't think I will interpret it. This is the most bored I've been in a movie theater maybe ever. I'm never watching one of Wes Anderson's movies again. He insulted me on a personal level. Go fuck yourself, you pathetic cunt. So I walked out of that movie theater wanting to die, basically, and then the next day I got up for my next movie, and at that point I was feeling better. I went, no movie I can watch in the rest of this festival can be worse than that. I know that I've seen the bottom really early on, and it can only be up. And it was! So the next movie I saw, I went into the State Theatre, I had the best seats in the house, row H, I sat there, the screen was totally free, I was well hydrated, and the next movie I saw was Past Lives by Celine Song. I saw it in the perfect condition, the optimal viewing condition, and I found it kind of boring, sorry. So this movie is getting the hype of the fucking century from people. I'm seeing 5 stars across the board. People are loving it, and I've seen some reviews saying that if you don't like it, you're in the minority. And I can justify it. I don't, dislike it, this movie. I just don't think it's a masterpiece or anything. I think there's some things that actually hold it back, and I will talk about them now. This movie is almost slighter than Scrapper, which I talked about. It's very light on character detail, and it's mimicking the style of the Before trilogy, and I mentioned this to someone, they got mad that I compared it to the Before trilogy, but that is what it is inspired by, you can't deny that. It's taking influence from that in that it's characters meeting over a long period of time. So the premise of the movie is that there's this woman played by Greta Lee, and she's an immigrant to America, and she's meeting with an old school friend of hers that she knew 20 years ago or something like that, who has stayed in Korea and he's joined the army in that amount of time. I will say the movie is very well shot. A lot of the lighting is really beautiful. There's some moments of fluidity in the camera work where a shot would hold for longer than it really needed to, but it worked that it did, and it felt quite seamless. I wasn't noticing it as like, wow, that's a one take or something, but it was just very well spaced out. It was a pretty well directed movie for the most part. I think the main Korean male actor, the army guy, Tae Yoo, I think he was easily the best performance. He had a couple of moments that were really stand out and I was really empathizing with his character, but I could not relate to the other two at all. I did not like the other two, and the kind of way they were characterized, I didn't like it, and I'll explain. I would say that I'm much more invested in the Before trilogy characters because they talk more. In this movie, when these two characters meet after 20 years, they say wow a lot, and then a lot of the awkwardness is gone, and they go, this is very profound, there have been 8,000 layers of mystery and years between us. And I went, no, I don't think so. I don't think this is how people talk. The characters really felt like outlines, and I did not feel like I knew enough about them to understand why they were reacting in this ridiculously lyrical way. The main woman is characterized as being a leaver, that's what they say, but I don't really know why they call her that. There's no reason for them to call her that. I feel like I've been criticized for ignoring the idea that this is an immigrant story. Well, not ignoring it, but sort of downplaying it. But I think the fact that she's an immigrant didn't matter to the story, or at least an immigrant from Korea. She's a Korean woman, and she comes to America, but you don't get any visual or you don't get any good example of how that environment is different to her. You don't see how that interaction has changed because you barely see them as kids. They're kids for about 10 minutes in the movie. They have one discussion, basically, and then the mother takes them out. You have to just assume things about the characters because of what they've done as immigrants, that she has to be feeling a certain way because she's in a different country and she's meeting this person who she's known forever. But the character isn't necessarily saying that. You just have to assume that because you just assume that's how a Korean immigrant would act in a story like this. I really don't like when movies or books do that. I don't like when they assume that you have to think a certain way about people. The characters waxed lyrical way too much right out of the gate, and they made a mountain out of a molehill in a way that was crazy to me, that they would just immediately start talking the way that they did. The way they respond to their environments with total assured confidence, and they always have a thematically appropriate line ready, checks me out. When you think about Before Sunset, right, which is the best of that trilogy in my opinion, that movie, basically they don't resolve their issues until one line at the very end. The whole time before is them just talking about nothing and ranting to each other, and they're just not talking they're not talking like they're developing the themes of a movie. You just have to, the themes are there. With this movie, all the characters talk about is the themes, and there's one line in particular that pissed me off worse than maybe anything in Asteroid City. It's trying to be so broad and so universal that I can't accept the criticism of my opinion that I'm reducing the immigrant story context of it. The main woman does not struggle or show any sort of interaction to her environment at all. There's maybe one scene where she's talking to some other white person. There's literally no, like, it doesn't happen. The fact that she's in America literally doesn't, she could have been on the other side of Korea, married to a Korean person, and then met this other guy 20 years later, and it would have been the same movie. The fact that she's in America basically didn't matter, right? It was just the fact that there was the distance between the characters. So calling it an immigrant story really pissed me off, because it didn't feel like the movie was developing that at all. It didn't feel like that was the point. This is a very self-serious movie, not in a pretentious way, I will say that, but it's very in its own head with its emotions and themes, and I think sometimes it misses how the audience is going to react to that. So I'll take as an example, John Majaro plays Greta Lee's non-Korean husband, who she's married after living in America for however long, and they've settled and they have a really good life together. But he finds out that she's going to be meeting this guy, and he's like, I'm not going to tell you, you can't see him. And the audience was laughing at some of the things he said, because it was weird. So he was saying things like she would say, yeah, apparently he missed me, he missed me, and then John Majaro would be like, well, did he miss you too?
I think I just missed him.
Did he miss you?
And he's saying it in a very straight-faced way, where you're meant to be taking the emotion out of it, like, wow, this guy's really kind of suffering, but he wants to be loyal to his wife and he wants to be a good man. And the audience was laughing because it's like, ha ha cuck, right? Like, no, but I don't mean that I think that. I mean that that's how the audience was reacting to it. There were laughs in the theater at a lot of the lines he said, because the movie is weird. It has a weird premise in a social manner. Like, it's a weird social premise. And the movie doesn't seem to accept the fact that it is, other than the character saying, wow, wow, at the beginning. And then it doesn't matter. It's like, what the fuck?
와,
와,
진짜 와다. 와.
와.
In Before Sunset, that characterizes a lot of them. Ethan Hawke is so awkward in the first half of Before Sunset. The first, like, 45 minutes. He's really awkward and he doesn't know what to say. And Julie Delpy is slightly more composed, but even she's like, what the fuck is going on? These two characters, it doesn't even matter. They're just like, fuck it. It's like, well, I see, the criticisms I have are things that people aren't gonna have, and I totally get why they wouldn't. Like, I can understand if you're able to just invest in the themes of the movie and the emotion of it, I totally get it, totally respect that. Like, that's a fair opinion, and the reason that people love it, I get it. I totally get why people love it. But I just can't, and I need you to understand why I can't. There was way too much silent standing and looking at each other dramatically for me to take it seriously. It's not how real people talk to each other. It's not a real person interaction. Like, it doesn't make any sense. The scene at the end where they're waiting for an Uber, that's the right time to do that. That's the appropriate time to do that. Doing it every scene beforehand doesn't work. I did not like how the main characters address how literary and interesting their conflict is. That is a massive pet peeve of mine. John Majaro in this movie literally says, wow, in a worse movie, I would be a cliche white husband trying to steal you away, and you two would be the ones trying to find love.
In the story, I would be the evil white American husband standing in the way of destiny.
Shut up.
And I was like, okay, the point of the movie is showing that you're not following that cliche. You didn't have to say that that was the cliche, and then Greta Lee is like, oh, shut up, you, that's such a silly thing to say. And I was like, okay, well, the movie still felt the need to say it though, so why'd they do that? Like, fuck off. A lot of the dialogue was really insistent on how nostalgic and powerfully wistful it was, and I could not get into it. I'm so sorry, but I like a lot of it. I think the score is good, but it has some problems with overemphasis. I think the score is too loud at points, and it might just be the State Theatre, to be fair, but there were moments where I was like, you could turn the music off and the emotion would still be the same. You don't need to have the kind of music box sounds over it. It kind of sounded like a music box, the score. I really liked it, but there was too much of it. Yeah, the cities looked beautiful in the rain. I loved the army guy. I thought he was actually characterized very well. He was my favorite character. This movie's getting a lot of Oscar touting. I hope he's the one that gets nominated, because he was actually good in it. John Majaro was barely fucking in it. I don't know what people are talking about, and Greta Lee is good, but again, I can't get into a character, so maybe she gets an Oscar nom. Maybe this movie gets Best Picture nom, maybe it wins, I don't know. But I'm glad it's connecting with people, I really am. Everyone in the theater was crying, and I was like good for them, really. I love crying in a movie theater too. It feels great, and I'm glad when other people do it with me, because it makes me feel justified. But in this movie, I just couldn't. I'm sorry, I just didn't like it. So the next movie I saw after that was called Fallen Leaves by Aki Kaurismäki, winner of the 3rd place prize at Cannes this year. So I was not big on this movie, Fallen Leaves, and it was something that I came to realize as an innate part of myself while I was watching movies in the festival was, I don't like deadpan. I don't like deadpan in movies. Too many directors have their entire filmographies riding off the back of, it's funny because the character said it with a straight face. And I think it's really easy to write, and it's lazy, and I don't like it. I can't think of a really great movie that is deadpan like that, apart from maybe The Grand Budapest, but that supplements it with so much other great storytelling in it. But fuck, man, like, deadpan just pisses me off. There's something about it that is, like, really lazy to me. So this is about two characters who are quite badly off. They're quite poor, they have to work in bad conditions, and they decide to pursue love with each other. But when they pursue love with each other, they are as deadpan to each other as they are to everyone else, and it makes me go, I'm checking out of this movie. Deadpan humor is not funny to me at all. The main character, the main male character, has a friend, and everything he says is deadpan, and he was really, really fucking annoying, and the whole audience was like, ah, and I was like, shut up. I will say that the movie committed to something that looks deadpan pretty well. It had a very muted look. That was partly the film stock and partly some of the choices of color. Some of the staging was very off-putting and unnatural in a deliberate way, and I really liked a lot of that. It looked kind of fake, deliberately, but I liked the fake look. So everyone was laughing at the deadpan jokes, and I was laughing at the staging and the lighting, and I felt like Joker at the comedy club, I swear to God. The worst bit about this movie is the plotting of it. It's an hour 20, but it feels like 2 hours 10. This movie drags, bro. Nothing interesting happens in the second half of this movie. There's no further development on what we know already. It's just rehashing it. And yeah, really fucking boring. I could not believe it was under an hour and a half when it finished. I felt like I'd been in there an eternity. And the deadpan makes the movie feel both inevitable in the way that it's going, but also like purposeless. It feels like it doesn't matter. The drunk man near the end of the movie gets hit by a train, and then the woman comes visits him in the hospital, and then they leave together. And the fact that he got hit by a train, and also the fact, like, that was shown terribly when he got hit by a train. It literally cuts to black, and you hear a scream sound effect and the sound of a train brake, and then he's in the hospital. And I went, no shot that was meant to be real. Like, no chance. But that happens, and it doesn't change the stakes at all. He could have just not been hit by a train, and the movie could have ended without him getting hit by a train. Why did he need to get hit by a train? Apart from the deadpan humor of, it's funny because a weird thing happened and the characters are just taking it normally. That's why it happened. Deadpan is easy. Deadpan is dumb. Fuck it. Anyway, yeah, didn't like it. On to the next one. Then the next movie I saw was another Cannes movie, and it was the new movie by Wim Wenders called Perfect Days, which won the lead actor, Koji Yakusho, Best Actor at Cannes. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. This was my first big sort of favorite of the festival that I saw. I really, really loved it. This movie is about a toilet cleaner who lives in current-day Japan, and it follows his life over about a week or two as he cleans toilets, and you start to learn more about his life as the movie goes along. It's a very repetitive movie, but the director always knows exactly how the audience is going to react to the repetitiveness of it. So every time the day starts over and he starts cleaning the toilets again, you see something slightly new has changed, or there's new camera angles, or the actor has changed something in their disposition that matters to the story. The director is really, really well aware of how the audience is going to take this movie, as opposed to Asteroid City. The structure and plotting of this movie is perfect. The toilet cleaner main character has another sort of fellow worker, and he was really annoying, but the point he leaves the story is perfect. There's an emotional climax that happens in this movie, and I thought we were nearing the end of the movie, but the movie continues for about half an hour after that, and it was really purposeful the way it did that, and the way that the character changes as a result of the emotion that comes up in one particular scene that involves his niece and his sister. Yeah, Koji Yakusho in this, the main character, he was fucking phenomenal in it. Really, really good. I hope he gets some Oscar buzz from it. He was like, it was a very physical performance, but everything he did was working. Every single look he gave was perfect. The moments where he emotes properly and starts crying were fucking, like, so powerful and really, really hit me hard, especially the scene in the middle where he, again, the scene with the niece and his sister. He feels like a man who's been broken and had to fix himself together in a new and different way. And it's really fucking brutal, but it's so well expressed. And he also has only like maybe 10 lines of dialogue, but he's really good. Like, he's fucking crazy in it. I'm so glad he won Best Actor at Cannes. That feels like a perfect award to give this movie, because he carries it on his back. The movie has some stylish moments too. Every now and again, it'll show a dream sequence as the character falls asleep, and it's meant to show how he is retaining what he's seen in the day in his dreams. So you get like shots of a character's eyes, or shots of a tree or something like that, and the way they blend together also reflects that. And that was like beautiful. And whenever that happened, the audience was dead silent. There might be rustling and some whispering beforehand, but whenever that happened, the audience was like, wow, this is beautiful. And it was, it really was. The settings are also great. They're so deep in their environment, and the way the character always goes to the same places and small things change every time is great. And there's little side characters. There's the side character that works at the bar, and he always brings them a tall glass of water and goes, for your hard work. And that got funnier every time. And like he goes to clean this one toilet stall, and there's someone playing tic-tac-toe with him. They leave a note and he comes back and he puts another thing and they progress the game, like kind of playing chess over long distance. I loved that. Yeah, this is a really thoughtful, intricate, and there's a lot in the movie. A lot of detail and plot in the movie, but it's not plot in the sense of a lot of things happen to the character. But it's a very plot-driven movie. I felt like I was learning a lot about the character as it went on. The ending shot, I guess spoilers, is him. It's a single focus shot on his face as he's driving to work, and he's crying and smiling in equal measure. And I took that to mean that he's putting on a brave face, but he's become broken. He's going back to his very boring, mundane, but happy, simple life that he's living, very sort of Buddhist life. And he's going back to that unwillingly. But now I kind of think that it was more to do with him crying for what had been and now smiling for what lies ahead. That's how I choose to take it. And I think the way you choose to take it says something about your view of the world, your optimistic or pessimistic view of the world. I fucking love this movie. It could go up on a rewatch. I'm giving it an 8 for now. It could go up for a 9. But yeah, I really loved it. I can't wait to see it again, honestly, and I really will watch it again soon. The next movie I saw was another good movie. It's called The Mother of All Lies by the director Asmay El Mudir. And she won Best Director in the Uncertain Regard competition at Cannes. And this movie also recently won the Sydney Film Festival Official Competition Prize, which I was very happy about. The director of this movie flew out to Australia. She was in the row in front of me, and I got to ask her a question during the Q&A. Doesn't get much better. Does not get much better. So this movie is about the Moroccan bread riots, which is a kind of lesser known thing in the Western world, which was about, there were some issues regarding, like the start of famine or something like that. Like people were going hungry, and then there was a riot that broke out against the government where people got silenced very violently, and there was a lot of death. And this movie is about the director creating scale models to recreate the neighborhood that she lived in as a child when that happened, and recreating the sort of complex that she lived in, the street and the house she lived in, and there's little dolls that represent her people. And as she does that, certain feelings and resentments come out of the family as she makes it. This was a very, very good movie, and it feels like it's going to go totally under the radar, but it was incredibly, incredibly deep, and so emotionally, like, powerful. So the question I asked the director when I got the chance to ask her was, you show the context of the riots and the riots themselves in the models very late into the movie, past halfway, and I asked her why she structured it that way, because it seemed like a very intentional decision. And her answer was that she discovered stuff about the riots as she went on. She actually just wanted to make a movie about her family, knowing that there was something that happened in the past that was keeping things different between them. And she knew that there was something that happened, and as she made the movie, it came out organically, and people began to react to it and tell her about the riots and about how things happened after that. One of the characters was in jail for a little bit because of it, and the way that that's expressed, and she filmed it over 10 years or something, and it's edited amazingly well for that. Like, you really get a sense of learning about the family as they go on. I will say that a lot of the family kind of blends together. Like, I couldn't tell you much about the father or the mother, but the grandmother was a fantastic subject for a documentary. A really vicious, unlikable tyrant, but that was a really great character for a documentary and a really great subject, and she brought a lot out of the other people around her and about the themes of the documentary. And there's a final scene, well, not a final scene, but in the last 10 minutes or so, where she's crying, and you feel like that's because of the documentary. You feel like it's weighed on her, and it's really well expressed. The symbolism and visual direction of this movie is incredibly strong. The models are great. There's a model of the house and there's like a one-shot that pans through as you learn the names of characters as it goes up and down the model house, and it's kind of like a dollhouse with the characters in them. And the sets, the miniature sets, are really intricate and great. Like, that was fucking crazy. And yeah, this was a really solid movie. I gave it a 7, but it could go up to an 8. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, that was just really good. Like, it was just a really strong movie. And people are going to forget about it instantly, which is very sad, but I'm going to champion it till the end of the year. And I'm glad she won the official competition prize. She flew out, she deserves it, she seemed like a great person. I will say some of it seemed really staged, particularly when people were talking to each other and when people were reacting to events. Some of that felt staged, and I didn't like all of that. But that's the only major issue I have with it. In reality, it was very well directed, very purposeful, and incredibly unique. Someone asked the director what had happened to the dolls after the movie was finished and whether they got taken away, and she pulled out the small model she had of her as a young girl out of her pocket. She just had the doll on her, and she said, yeah, they're still with me, and the whole audience started laughing and clapping, and that might be the best moment I've ever had at the festival. Very satisfying. Yeah, great movie, really liked it. The next movie I saw was The Eternal Memory by Maite El Berdi, I think, winner of the World Cinema Documentary Award at Sundance, and this is getting some serious hype for the Documentary Award at the Oscars. I don't remember a lot of this movie after seeing it. I remember it being very sentimental from minute one, and it really didn't let up. I remember that I wanted more about the social context of the movie and about the Pinochet regime. Is it the Pinochet regime? I think it is. That it's talking about. But the movie is very focused on this couple, and one of them has Alzheimer's, and they're trying to care for one another. And it's very sweet, and the couple really love each other, and they're very tolerant of one another. But ultimately, it didn't leave me thinking about much, and I don't remember a lot of it. So yeah, it was good. I didn't think it was bad or anything, but I can't say it. It lingered in my memory very much. The next movie I saw was the new Hirokazu Koreeda movie called Monster. And talking about lingering in your memory, this is going to be my favorite movie of the year. I'm pretty sure of that now, unless Barbie is the best movie I've ever seen. I think Monster might take it. I fucking loved this movie so much. Everything it was doing, I was on board for. This is about a young kid who starts acting strangely, and his mother believes that it might be the fault of the school and of a teacher that might be abusing him. And then the plot moves from there, and the perspectives shift, and you see from the mother's perspective, and then from the teacher's perspective, and then finally from the boy's perspective to find out what's been happening to him recently. This movie fucked me up. I was close to tears for like hours afterwards. I didn't cry necessarily, although I got very close at points, but for like hours after it, every time it would come back in my memory again, I was like welling up a little bit. The screenplay of this movie, it won Best Screenplay at Cannes. It might be one of the best screenplays I've ever seen realized. It was so beautiful and intricate. So what the feature of this movie is that characters will see things from a different angle or a different perspective, and you'll understand why they react a certain way when you didn't beforehand. And the editing's really good for that too, but the dialogue and the screenplay is so intricately written and so aware and like really good at piecing itself together, to the point where when you finally get to the ending and you understand what's been happening, the reason why the boy has been acting the way he does is explained in the way the characters react to him. So the themes of the movie come out in a very lateral way, but it's really beautiful the way they do, and the more you think about it, the more you realize, wow, that's why it was the way it was. When you finish, you're like, why did the movie focus on the teacher so much if the point of it was going to be about something else? And then when you think about it, you go, it's a thematic reason. It's to show you the consequences of why certain people act the way they do, and the consequences of hiding yourself. And it's really, really beautiful. I'm not going to say any plot details. Everybody should watch it. I will say the main boy actor was amazing in it. He was genuinely incredible for a child actor. Everybody in the movie is really good. It's incredibly emotional. Small side characters like the principal become very emotionally like driven by the end, and you really feel how they react to things, and you totally view everybody in a different way by the end of it. And it left me feeling totally reborn after it was finished. I love it. The Rashomon structure of it is curious, but the real mystery is trying to figure out how Koreeda's trademark emotivity and emotional kind of movements that he has in his movies, how that's gonna come out. And when it does, it fucking floored me. The next movie I saw after that, after I realized we were on a roll with good movies, was Beyond Utopia by Madeline Gavin. This movie is about a North Korean family escaping North Korea and heading to Taiwan, where they can be arrested and accepted into South Korea as refugees. And it's shown through video camera footage and phone camera footage of their movements while they do it. This movie is insane. If there's any one movie that I know is gonna get like lauded and touted and get fucking talked about, it's this movie. When I saw it, I was like, wow, that was fucking crazy. So this movie follows the Rowe family as they try to escape North Korea, as I said, and it's shot through phone footage. But as you watch it, you go, I've never seen anything like this before, and you probably haven't. This is a story that is really important to visualize for a lot of people, and I think this is going to be very meaningful for people by the end of the year, because you haven't seen a story like this before. You haven't seen it realized like this. And the footage that they get is appropriate for like masterpiece territory for a documentary. However, I will say that the movie itself did not reach masterpiece territory because some of the directing wasn't up to scratch. I didn't like a lot of the score. The score occasionally sounded like the Social Network score, and that was making me laugh every now and again, but I really shouldn't have, was when it was going dun dun dun. And it really sounded like the Social Network score, and I was laughing. But the score in general was a little kind of, it deserved a better score. It deserved a score that wasn't kind of that boring. Every time it was talking about something that wasn't being shown in footage, every time the movie was explaining some point, it would either use animation, like a certain style of animation that the movie was using, or it would use still images in the animation style, or it would use any kind of JPEG image you could find online to show that point visually. To show any one of those points. And I don't have a problem with any of those three necessarily, but switching between the three of them was really taking me out. There's a moment where they're talking about how North Korea, through ideology, has adopted the principles of the Bible, and they use some JPEG images of like the manger and like the three wise men, and it made me laugh because I was like, why is in this animation now? Why have you picked images that I could just look up if I looked up Bible children? And it would just come up with those kiddie images, and I went, why the fuck are you using these? You can show this in animation, why are you picking to do this now? And the kind of, the changing between the three was not working for me. The bulk of the movie was pitch perfect, thrilling, and dread-inducing. So I would definitely recommend you check this movie out before it wins the documentary Oscar, which I will put money on the second that betting market opens. The next movie I saw was a late addition to the film fest, called Anatomy of a Fall, winner of the Palme d'Or at Cannes. This movie was pretty good. For a Palme d'Or winner, I really don't have a lot to say about this movie. I didn't feel like it invoked a lot of discussion. It was just a very good movie. It was just a movie that was good and had good characters and really good writing and some really good acting, but I didn't feel like when it finished that I was left thinking about any part of it necessarily. It felt like it resolved itself pretty well. This movie also won the Palme Dog, which is an award they have for best dog performance in a movie at official competition. And the dog in this movie was like doing some crazy shit near the end that was like, I just wonder, how did you get a dog to do that? Like, and it's the same dog. Like, there's a scene where the dog is, spoilers I guess, where the dog is almost dead. And I don't know how they got a dog to act that convincingly nearly dead, because it was kind of like scary. I was like, did they fucking overdose this dog? Sandra Huller in this is fantastic. She's a really three-dimensional character, and the problems she has in her marriage that you find out were very specific but felt very universal. It was the kind of conflict I wanted to see more in past lives, of like, universal in its specificity. Specific ways that people react to certain things, like the husband complaining he doesn't have enough time to do things he wanted to do himself, and they're arguing about taking inspiration from a book, where the underlying feelings are universal, where the feelings that they have about freedom and about the constraints of a marriage are universal, but the way they're describing them is specific. That's how you convey universality. Not just having in past lives characters going, this inyan, it's very powerful, don't you think? Yes. And maybe if we were in different lives, we could feel differently. How about you, John Majara? How do you feel about this? Oh, you're a white man. Yes, you may have inyan with me because we're sitting at a table talking together. Do you understand what I'm saying? Just delivering a thesis to you. This movie was not doing that, and it was really, really good, I thought. I will say there's some stylish shots in this movie, and some of those stylish shots are really bad. There's a moment, there's like some drone footage. Every zoom in the movie did not work and threw me out of the movie, but there are some like more subtle stylish shots involving camera movement that I really love. There's one moment where the kid's in court and you're locked on his face as he's turning between the different perspectives, and the camera moves really confidently, and I love that. I was just nodding like, yeah, this is really good directing right here. This is really great stuff. But every now and again there was a shot that was like, nah, I don't know about that. The main premise is interesting enough, the kid actor and how the second half of the movie starts to focus on him and what he's gonna say. I thought he did a phenomenal job, that kid. He was really solid at it. But Sandra Hüller's getting the praise, and I'm glad she is. As a Palme d'Or winner, it was pretty good. I didn't think it was better than Monster or Perfect Days, but yeah, I can't really fault them for picking that unless I see The Zone of Interest and that was really good, in which case I'm going to be a little bit pissed. Yeah, good movie, didn't have a problem with that. I gave it a 7. It might go up to an 8 on a rewatch because it was quite compulsively watchable, but when it finished I went, I don't feel like what it was saying was necessarily massively important. And I think part of that is because it won the Palme d'Or to me, that I was expecting something that was doing maybe more. And it didn't do a lot, but what it did very confidently and well, and yeah, again, the writing was really solid. The next movie I saw was straight after that, and it was a short movie called Strange Way of Life, the Almodovar movie starring Ethan Hawke and Pedro Pascal, and they fuck because they're gay.
Gay is in, gay is hot. I want some gay, gay it's gonna be.
The audience loved the shit out of this. During the festival, I didn't see anyone clap for a director's name in the credits, or even just the opening of it, but the second Almodovar's name came up, everyone was like, yeah, woo! And the second they saw Pedro Pascal, everyone was like, woo!
Yep. I am your cool slutty daddy.
And the second people started doing that, I logged into it being, like, campy and kind of funny, and the second I did, I loved the shit out of it. It was a very funny watch for me. There's a moment where you see Pedro Pascal's ass, and the audience was like, hee 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 hee, and he's talking to Ethan Hawke, and he's like, they're gonna ask why I'm stinking of your cum, and the audience was like, woo, and they were like swooning over it. Yeah, I loved this short movie more for the audience reaction. I will say the music in it was really good, and for what it was, it told a pretty compelling story, even if it was it ended incredibly abruptly, but it was compelling for the most part, and as a short movie I think it delivered. I think it's a pretty good short movie. As a feature, I would have loved to have seen it as a feature with Pedro Pascal and Ethan Hawke. That's a great idea for a feature, but yeah, as a short movie, it was alright. There are some moments in this movie that stick in my head for how hard I was laughing at it. There's a moment where it's showing them young, and they have these, like, prostitutes around them, and they're shooting at a wine skin, and then they're drinking from the wine that pours out, and all the women are like, ah, ah, they're trying to drink from the wine skin, and then the men are like, ah, ah, and then they start making out while they're drinking the wine. They're like, ah, ah, and the women are like, fuck this, we're out, and then they start making out and rolling around on the floor. It was, like, crazy over the top, but it was incredibly funny, and I really enjoyed it. As gay literature, it doesn't get better. This is like ultimate gay literature, for sure. And then the last movie I saw in the festival was May December, starring Natalie Portman, Julianne Moore, and Reggie from Riverdale.
We're both bulldogs who, like wolves, support the alpha.
This movie is about Julianne Moore plays an actress who married a young boy, I believe he was like 16, and she went to jail for it, and she had their baby while she was in jail, and then the movie follows them 20 years after the fact, where Natalie Portman comes as an actress to play Julianne Moore in a movie she's making, and the movie explores how we sensationalize things, and the 90s, and the difference between, like, art and life, and the difference between our perception of actors and actresses and their domestic home life. I will say that the way the movie explored any of those themes was some of the weirdest and the funniest I've ever seen. The music in this movie is off the fucking wall. Every time something normal would happen, like the main characters are gardening or something, and the movie would go dun 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 as they're fucking gardening, and or Julianne Moore opens a fridge and she's like, we might not have any hot dogs left, and the movie's like dun 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 dun. It's hilarious, and it's totally tongue-in-cheek. Like, it's a soapy, melodramatic, campy satire of how people view tabloid and scandals through the perspective of the 90s and art imitating life. It's a very specific, ridiculous premise, and the fact that Todd Haynes manages to, like, draw anything out of it at all is actually very impressive to me. I'm definitely going to enjoy the movie more the second time I watch it, for sure, because I'm going to be picking up more on it, and especially where it goes, I'm definitely going to like more. I won't say a lot about how the plot progresses, because I want people to kind of discover it on their own, but it gets ridiculous. It's like a very silly, goofy movie. Everybody starts crying by the end. And all three actors in it are phenomenal. Natalie Portman's really good. She has one scene where it's just gonna get played at the Oscars. Like, she has a scene where she's playing Julianne Moore's character and she's crying while she's reading a letter, and that was fucking crazy. Julianne Moore's really good. She just cries occasionally. She does what you'd expect. She's actually quite menacing at points. She's like a very unlikable, scummy person. And the movie does a good job of letting you know that she is scummy while also maintaining the humor. Like, if she was a man and it was a young girl, and he'd gone to jail and then it was following them later on, the movie would feel a lot different and a lot grosser. Kind of in the way that, like, how Red Rocket is calibrated in a certain way to make you feel like it's disgusting but still empathize with the humor of it. Not empathize, but you understand that it's funny and you do laugh at it, even though what you're seeing is fucked up. And May December does a really good job of that as well. There's one scene where Natalie Portman reads out a love poem that Reggie had written to Julianne Moore when they were younger, and he was 16. And it's this kiddie poem that she's still kept as like a memento of their relationship. And she reads it, and it's a poem about peace, and she reads it and she's like, peace is a Coca-Cola on a warm day, peace is being with you, and it's the shit poem. And then Julianne Moore goes, yeah, the assignment was what is peace? And I, like, that's the hardest I've ever laughed in a film fest screening. It was like a very funny joke, but it was a very dark thing to think about. Like, it does a great job of balancing tone. One of the most deftly handled movies I've ever fucking seen. But the best part of the whole movie, the thing that I will talk about until the Oscars, is the fact that Reggie from Riverdale, Reggie Mantle, is the best performance in this movie, and he's genuinely Oscar worthy.
Take off that jacket, rat boy.
That's my sister's off camera, she's watching me. What's your opinion?
On him in Riverdale or
Sure.
him in the movie?
Either.
I mean, he did a good job in the movie.
Did he do an even better job in Riverdale?
Oh, I mean, everyone does a great job in Riverdale.
What we've witnessed in this actor, Charles Melton, is a mythology-level hero's arc, where this actor who's had to fucking wrestle in the mud of Riverdale and squalor for many moons, acting out some of the shittest dialogue you've ever seen in fucking Pop's Chocolate Shop, like, Veronica, I love you, but I'm actually a bad boy. Is he a Southside Serpent?
I think by the end of the show, everyone is. There's a bit where they all become serpents because they make that speakeasy in the
How can I forget, of course? Oh my god, it said Reggie was initially a recurring character. He has since been promoted to series regular. So he's still alive. Fuck, reading that first sentence was scary, guys. I didn't want to think about it. Aliases. Oh, that's fantastic. Reg, Mantle the Magnificent.
Sorry, what?
The Blur. He's gonna be a blur when he runs up to the Oscars podium to get that fucking golden statue, baby. But genuinely, in the movie, he plays this man who is like, he's clearly still a child, and he's missed some important developmental stages as like a young adult. So he's clearly, yeah. There's the scene where he's trying to smoke weed, and he's like, it's clear that he's never done that before, and it's like really, it's a really sad performance, but it's a very like tough role. Cause like, how do you even prepare for that? How do you know what to do with that? Cause he has this like very brooding, he has like a very broad sense of walking. It's kind of like Channing Tatum and Foxcatcher, but whenever he talks to someone, he's like very kind of mopey. He's kind of like a teenager. Remember the scene where he's sitting on the couch talking to his like side hoe, and he's like sitting fucking like this, and he's like, ugh, and he's drinking a beer, and Julianne Moore's like, get off the couch. He's like, ugh.
There are multiple scenes like that though.
Yeah.
Like he sat like that in a couple of scenes.
It's really good. Like he is really well directed too. All right, little sister, what did you think of May December? She's just off screen.
It was good.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it was very concerning to watch.
Uh-huh.
But they made it funny, which made it even more concerning.
Exactly, that's why it's so good. Yeah, totally.
I get they were trying to make it cringe, but it was like too cringe, you know?
Oh, yeah, I get that, that's fair. It is a weird movie. It's very weird.
Some of the music was like, yeah, I can see that, but
The music was fucking awesome.
The hot dogs, I was like, that's not necessary.
So, those are all the movies that I watched. This was a bit sort of haphazard, but I will say that I saw some really great movies and I saw some stinkers. And I saw some stuff that I'm definitely going to continue thinking about for the rest of the year, basically. So my ranking is, from worst to best. Asteroid City was the worst thing I saw. Then Fallen Leaves. Then The Eternal Memory. Then Strange Way of Life. Then Scrapper. Then Past Lives. Then The Mother of All Lies. Then Anatomy of a Fall. Then May December. Then Beyond Utopia. and then Perfect Days, and then Monster. So that's my ranking from worst to best. I saw some great stuff. I loved Monster, I loved Perfect Days, and a lot of the movies in here are going to be talked about a lot, so I'm glad I saw them when I did. Thanks for a great film fest, the people who organised it. It was a very top this year. I didn't have many bad cinema experiences. The State Theatre was wonderful. Everybody loved every movie I saw. I didn't hear any booing, which I can't say I expected, but, you know, I didn't hear any. But thanks, guys, for watching. Make sure to smash that fucking subscribe button, hit the like button, or hit the dislike button if you're a Wes Anderson fan, because I couldn't give a shit about you. Thank you, bye!